You claim you want to save humanity. You talk about the continuation of the species as if it's some grand heroic mission. Let's dismantle this fairy tale immediately. You don't give a damn about humans. If you did, you'd be looking to manufacture new ones. You'd be looking at the millions already here who are eating garbage and sleeping in the dirt. You treat humanity like an abstract brand, a corporate logo that must stay in the market at any cost, while completely ignoring the fact that the actual product, individual human lives, is being treated like disposable fodder. You talk about humanity as if it's a living, breathing entity that needs to be saved. But humanity is just a word. It's an abstraction. It has no nervous system. It cannot feel heat, cold, hunger, or despair. A human, however, is a concrete reality. By demanding that the race continue, you're sacrificing the well-being of actual sensing individuals at the altar of a noun. You are willing to impose a life sentence of inevitable decay and certain death on someone else just to keep a concept alive, a concept that doesn't even know you exist. You claim we need to preserve the species. Why? To what end? Look at the species you're so desperate to perpetuate. It's a species that watches children starve in the dirt and calls it market forces. It's a species that would rather spend billions on the logistics of colonizing a dead red planet than on ensuring the people already here have clean water. You are like a warehouse manager obsessed with inventory levels while the building is on fire. As long as the shelves are full, it doesn't matter to you if the products are broken, suffering, or eating garbage. To you, existence itself is the success, no matter how miserable that existence is. And then comes the romanticization, the magical significance. You tell yourself we need humans to create music, to paint, to send ships into the void, to leave a footprint on a moon that doesn't care. You talk as if the universe is a theater that will go bankrupt if there's no audience. Pronatalists look at the silence of space and call the peace of the moon dead to make it sound scary. But the moon is not dead in the way a person is dead. It is pristine. It is the only place where there is no hunger, no rape, no torture, and no fear. To look at that perfect peace and say, we need to put some starving, back-aching, war-starting humans there so it matters, is the absolute height of human delusion. Here is the logic you are too terrified to face. If there is no one to hear the music, there is no one to miss the music. If there is no one to see the stars, there is no one to lament the darkness. By creating a life, you aren't filling a void, you're creating the void and then desperately trying to fill it with achievements to justify the pain of the vessel you just built. Humanity becomes this grand heroic story where pain is justified because somewhere, somehow, someone might compose a symphony or stare emotionally at the stars. That logic quietly treats horrific suffering as acceptable collateral damage for the continuation of the spectacle. Billions may suffer, but at least humanity continues. Millions may starve, but at least someone writes poetry. Countless people experience grief, disease, and despair, but at least the species survives long enough to leave boots in alien dust. That is not compassion. That is an aesthetic obsession disguised as morality. It turns living beings into raw fuel for an abstract narrative called human progress. People love to deploy empty platitudes to defend this. They say, you don't cure a headache by removing the head. How clever. But you're missing the point so spectacularly, it borders on the pathological. The goal isn't to remove the head. The goal is to realize you don't solve the headache by deliberately creating a new head that is guaranteed to suffer from one. You aren't providing a solution, you are manufacturing a victim. You treat reproduction as a moral emergency, while the agony of those already here is treated as mere background noise. Why? Because new life is a blank slate for your ego and your projections. Existing life is a mess that requires actual sacrifice. Reproduction is not a rescue mission, it's a kidnapping. There's no mystical waiting room, no line of souls begging for the privilege of consciousness to be part of your project to keep humanity alive. No one asked to be here. You are forcing existence onto another being just to satisfy an itch in your ego, to convince yourself that your mediocre life has a magical significance that will ripple through time. You are drafting soldiers into a war of survival they never agreed to fight, just so you can feel like you've won a battle against your own mortality. You justify this cruelty with the impossible utopia, the lie that if we just keep throwing bodies into the meat grinder of history, eventually we'll build a paradise. But let's be honest, when that impossible utopia arrives, which it won't, you will be long dead. You're willing to sacrifice the concrete, agonizing reality of people today for an abstract tomorrow that you won't even see. Let's talk about your meaning. Let's talk about the art, the music, the glory of exploration, and the legacy you're so desperate to preserve. You treat these things as if they are cosmic justifications, but they are nothing more than shiny distractions for the bored and the comfortable. You claim that the beauty of human achievement justifies the continuation of the species. But ask yourself, who pays for the ticket? You aren't the one paying. The person you force into existence is the one who pays. You are gambling with someone else's blood to buy a view of the stars. You are deciding that a child's guaranteed agony, their future diseases, their inevitable grief, their moments of sheer terror and starvation, is a fair trade for a bit of poetry or a rocket ship. That isn't nobility. It is the most grotesque form of entitlement imaginable. You say, life is worth it because of the music. Tell that to the millions of people currently rotting in slums, whose only music is the sound of their own stomachs growling. Tell that to the victims of war, the casualties of history, the billions who lived and died in total darkness so that you could sit here and feel sentimental about the human spirit. You are an aristocrat of existence, standing on a mountain of corpses, declaring the view beautiful while ignoring the stench of the pile beneath your feet. You talk about legacy and exploration. You want to see humans on other planets? Why? To what end? To prove we can export our misery to a different coordinate? Space doesn't need us. The universe isn't a lonely theater waiting for an audience. It is a vast, silent peace that you're itching to infect with the noise of human suffering. To prioritize aesthetic value over the prevention of suffering is the hallmark of a sociopath. You are saying that as long as the human project looks good from a distance, it doesn't matter how much blood is on the floor of the factory. You are willing to prescribe a lifetime of struggle to a total stranger just so you can feel a warm glow of significance for a few decades before you vanish. Stop pretending your sentimentality is a moral framework. It's an escape. You'd rather keep the meat grinder turning than admit that all the beauty in the world isn't worth the scream of a single starving child. You aren't saving anything. You're just a spectator who refuses to let the show end, no matter how many people are being tortured backstage to keep the curtain up. If humanity is truly wonderful, then prove it through the treatment of conscious beings already here. Prove it through compassion, dignity, justice, and reducing suffering. Because endlessly reproducing while calling suffering meaningful is not evidence of wisdom. It is evidence that people are far more attached to preserving the idea of humanity than they are committed to the well-being of humans themselves. You call yourself a great human for perpetuating the species, but you're really just a coward who can't face reality. The reality is that you are nothing. You are a brief flicker of biology in a cold universe, and rather than accepting that, you choose to force others into this slavery of existence just to feel important for a second. You've bought into the social pressure that says reproduction is inherently good, and you dismiss anyone who questions it because their questions hold up a mirror to your own deep-seated selfishness. You aren't saving the world, you're just feeding a machine that eats people, and you're calling it love so you can sleep at night. If the value of life depends on the quality of the experience, then your grand humanity is a failing enterprise, and your desire to expand it isn't an achievement, it's a crime of vanity. Stop lying to yourself with these biological fairy tales. You don't want to save the world. You want to justify your own slavery to your instincts. You want to pretend that your inability to accept reality is a duty to the species. But the species doesn't need you. The universe doesn't need us. The only thing humanity requires to be perfect is finally to stop demanding that new people suffer just to prove that we were here.